Well, we seem to have sparked something in the house, inside and out, and I'm glad you're having a good time. Our next speaker is going to talk about the evolution of an idea and how it spread to the rest of the world. But first, I'd like to introduce the person who's going to introduce Lisa Crump. There are many good things I could say about Teresa Shelton, but I believe this recent award to her from the Mathematical Association of America sums up her impact on her peers and her students. Dr. Shelton has just been awarded the MAA Section Award for Service to Students. This is the Ron Barnes Distinguished Service to Students Award. It represents both the teacher's commitment to their student and the respect of their peers. I'd like to add my personal congratulations to that honor, and please welcome Dr. Teresa Shelton.
Pirates and present pirates and future pirates, in particular the 9th grade class of Meridian School. Welcome. I'm glad to have all of y'all here. And I'm happy to present Lisa Crump, who is founder of Cairn Ventures. One of the things our last speaker asked for, Bruce Beasley, asked for, was to make things bigger, better, faster, and cheaper. And I think that's what Lisa Crump and her affiliates are doing. So Cairn Ventures is a company that invests predominantly in early stage, high growth potential companies in the Midwest. Lisa has over 25 years of leadership experience in startup to late stage growth companies with a particular focus in technology, in the technology manufacturing sector. She's co-founder of Stratasys, Inc., which is on NASDAQ. It's a high-tech manufacturer of the 3D printers that some of y'all have seen out there, used for rapid prototyping and additive manufacturing. Stratasys products are used in medical, electronic, consumer products, education, and aerospace industries, and they help to shorten the time to bring new products to market. Post-merger Stratasys Limited 2013 revenues were $487 million. Lisa Crump served as board chair of MedModeler, LLC, a spin-off for the utilization of 3D printing with medical imaging modalities to enhance surgical outcomes. Before that, she was an executive responsible for distributor sales and marketing for SI Technology, Inc., a semiconductor handling equipment and weigh scale gauge manufacturer that grew to $35 million in revenue before being acquired. Lisa has served as a director, investor, or advisor to multiple area companies or organizations. She has been active over many years in supporting community-based nonprofits with a focus on engaging youth in the sciences, including Girl Start, through which she supports STEM education for girls. She supports women entrepreneurs building scalable businesses. Lisa Crump serves as an advisor to the Collaborative's annual Minnesota Venture and Finance Conference, and is a member of the Minnesota-based Gopher Angels, Sophia Angels, and the National Angel Capital Association. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree and Master of Science degree. And please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Lisa Crump.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Dr. Shelton. And I know Professor Visser is still in the wings here, so what I'd like to do first is just share that I had a chance to visit a couple summers ago to the Visser Valley in France, some of the caves there that had the wonderful Paleolithic art renderings that maybe some of you have also had the chance to visit. And there, in this spectacular, awe-inspiring renderings out of charcoal and ochre, are different themes of animals and hunting scenes. And one of the animals depicted there is the auroch. And the auroch is actually the ancestor to today's longhorn cattle. So given the rich history here in Texas, ranching history, we'd like to present to you, Professor Visser, this plaque in honoring your symposium here today.
Thank you very much.
You know, if someone had told me 25 years ago that I'd be standing here before you to talk about a new industry called rapid prototyping, I don't really think I would have believed them. But there has really been a monumental change happening here. Just want to catch up here. There's our plaque. Didn't quite do the Paleolithic artist justice, though, I don't think. But really, there have been monumental changes that have happened in the past 25 years. And it has truly been a remarkable time. And this is sort of a nod to a master woodblock artist, Hokusai. So have most people had a chance to see the 3D printers in action out there now? Okay, great. Yeah, I know Gigabot's there, MakerBot's there, and it's just hard to understand what it is unless you've had a chance to see it in action. And in coming in this morning, I came in through the entrance where I could see some of the exhibit that'll be opened up tonight of the artwork that is represented by Dr. Visser's students and herself and some of the luminaries here, and it's really awe-inspiring. So, creativity and innovation truly are in abound. Mary had asked me if I might talk about the creation of the 3D printing company Stratasys, and then I'd like to also talk about some of the disruptive, innovative examples in the arts and sciences. And actually, Professor Visser has given a great overview already, but I'll kind of deep dive a little bit, and how awe-inspiring Bruce Beasley's presentation was, and some of the history and the evolution of his artwork. So our story begins in the 80s when Scott, my husband, and I were early stage operators at a small manufacturing company where we made XY positioning equipment for the back end of the semiconductor industry. Basically, we were a machine tool company for helping to process integrated circuit chips. So in '88, we had a third product we wanted to bring to market, and we needed to create a model. And by the time we got to creating the model, we actually missed the market window and missed the opportunity. So Scott kind of goes, hey, there has to be a faster way to get something done so we don't repeat this. So Scott has his aha moment, and of course, like a lot of people do, go to the garage and started to experiment. So what he did was he took some ideas that he had using a 2D plotter, and that formed the roots of fused deposition modeling. The proof of concept actually came in the form of kind of a blob, which had kind of spindly legs coming out of it, and that was then deemed toy frog from our daughter, who was at that time 2.5 years old. So this is a little artistic license from the frog that was then, and a MakerBot output frog now. So that kept her happy for maybe about 10 minutes, so we had to keep at it. Scott kept working in the garage. And kind of like what happens with a lot of early stage companies, we were working out of our home. And our inventory of pots and pans was dwindling because of, for the causes of materials experimentation, because we were using our own stove and oven. And of course, once you know Thanksgiving is approaching, and of course Thanksgiving is going to be at our house, and we had the problem of competing priorities. Do we want caramelized plastic wafting in the air, or the smell of a browning turkey? So that kind of pushed the operation fully into the garage, and we made more space there. The previous company that Dr. Shelton had mentioned had gone public, a very small company, of course not on the order of Facebook at all, but it was enough that gave us some seed capital to get Stratasys started. We had no formal business plan at the time, but with Scott's vision, we just kind of said, hey, let's go for it, and decided to get Stratasys started. So Scott completed the initial development in the summer. We filed patent applications so that we could protect Scott's invention from being copied by competitors. And here are some of the early models. As you can see, they're pretty draft quality. I don't know what you can pick up on the screen, but you can see the layering very definitely. We also had big seams between the start and stop of the layers. But it was enough to kind of say, hey, we've got something here, let's keep moving on it. Of course, we went through our cash pretty quickly, even though we strove to have a lean organization. So we went to our first round of friends and family, and then we sought venture capital because we needed to get through our beta program. We found a VC who stepped up to provide $1.2 million in funding. Half of it was provided at that time, and then half of it was when we met certain milestones. And as you can probably gather, we didn't meet our milestones in the time frame we were supposed to meet it in, so we were really sucking wind, and it was a very difficult time for the company. As we were moving more towards the milestones and we made progress with the beta program, we were able to get that second tranche. So, the beta program. Our early partners included 3M and Biomet. 3M, I'm sure most people know of. Multi-modality. They have products and consumer products, medical, across the board, huge multinational company. Biomet, maybe not so much familiarization. They're a custom knee and hip implant company. So actually the medical industry became an early adopter of this technology. As you can imagine, we had a lot of problems. In fact, we were talking about some of these this morning at breakfast. Some of the problems we had related to the materials, some of it related to the machine operation, some of it related to, one of the questions earlier was on inputs into the equipment. So in order to have a successful beta program, the beta partners kind of told it like it was, helped us to try and get through some of these challenges. So here are some of the ones that we had. We had problems with bonding the materials, each layer bonding with the previous layer to actually grow the part. Some of the materials were not consistent, so that didn't happen. We had contamination within the material, so it caused tip plugging. Someone was talking about referring to spaghetti. Well, that's what happened if you had a tip plug. You'd have a partial extrusion happen. So we kind of gutted through it with our beta customers, and were able to work the problems, those initial problems, through successfully with them. And in fact, our first order came from Biomet. Here's a picture of our first operating 3D printing machine. Looks a little different from the cool things that you're seeing out there. So we had a basic product, and we needed to move forward on it. We were able to get a press release out to 150 different magazines, and with that, that was something that I was chartered with. We were able to get like 10,000 leads in a short period of time, in less than a year. And that was fantastic, but we didn't get any orders. So it wasn't until we got the order from Biomet and finished that beta program that we were really able to start launching the program. And the press releases gave us basically free advertising, which was huge since we were really trying to run lean. So it's kind of like the value of social media before there was social media to take advantage of. Mary did an excellent job of talking about the different early core technologies. It's kind of like that umbrella term that we called rapid prototyping before, and now we call it additive manufacturing, or now 3D printing. So the first technology was sterile lithography, SLA, and that would be your first prong in your umbrella. Chuck Hull was the inventor of that technology, and still is active as the chief, I think he's Chief Innovation Officer at 3D Systems. Fused deposition modeling is a technology that Scott invented, And most of the low-end printers are using that core technology method at this time. SLS, selective laser sintering. Actually, Carl Deckert is out of UT Austin, and he, under the support of his advisor, Joe Beeman, he was the inventor of selective laser sintering. And then there are some other things that didn't quite make it, but there's a new life in laminated object modeling with MCore. So technology company needs funds in order to grow, so we decided it made sense to go public and allow for folks like you to be able to help fund the company for its continued growth through stock. And one of the things we couldn't do as a small company was compete with the larger companies like 3M, which is in our home neck of the woods in Minnesota. But what we could do was offer an employee stock option plan. So those folks, especially who were with us from the early days, were able to do very well with their stock. So that's one nice thing about a small company, enabling great contributors or early employees and continuing with our present employees to be able to move forward with the company. So today that wave is in full swing. It's disrupting, it's empowering. You can use it as an individual creator, or you can use it for mass customization at a large corporation. There are growing opportunities. It's really broad-based. If you can think of it, if you can think it, you can create it. So it's not just in the domain of the design engineer. The industry sectors are all across the board. We started really with the industrial sector, including automotive. They were early adopters. We talked about medical orthopedic implants. They were early adopters. Dental implants. It's being used for dental implants now. We'll have a clip at the end showing the use of it in entertainment. So consumer, it's just across the board. Materials offerings. So, 15,000 years ago, our friends from the Paleolithic era maybe had charcoal and ochre as their palette. But now, with the digital materials from PolyJet and the additional materials from the other technologies, we can offer about 1,200 material gradations, from different colors to different flexible materials, rigid materials. And what's really cool is that even disparate materials can be used together in the same build with some of the technologies like PolyJet. So Stratasys now is in 71 countries. A couple years ago, Stratasys Inc. Merged together with Objet to create Stratasys Limited. And so we married the FDM technology with the PolyJet technology between those two companies. And since then, we've added Solidscape, MakerBot, Solid Concepts, and Harvest and GrabCAD to the fold. And those of you who are local, in fact, I think most of you here are local, Harvest Technologies and Solid Concepts are service bureaus that have very high-end expertise in manufacturing technologies and skills. And Harvest is just up the street in Belton, and Solid Concepts has a facility in Austin. In terms of product suites, like I mentioned, Stratasys goes now from a small printer from the MakerBot line all the way up to the Fortis and the large Connex lines, so that you can go from a low-end price point around $1,000 to equipment that's pretty spendy, but also is more production grade. I like to kind of think of it as a waterfall effect. Bruce talked about freedom of expression, and it's really true. You really have some benefits here that maybe you can't embrace with other tools like traditional manufacturing CNC tools. It provides you with versatility. It provides you with freedom from complexity. It's an accelerator. You can do things quickly in multiple iterations without the cost associated with it. The materials have a cost, but certainly they're not in the realm of doing a full product and then repeating it over and over again. You can do mass customization, like the Invisalign for those who are familiar with the orthodontic procedure. So it's really exciting what can happen from this technology. So I'd like to talk a little bit now about the wave of opportunity in the arts. One of the things that we talked about is the ability to do very complex, intricate art. Here are some SLS 3D printed parts for Aveda Canada. Wonderful detail there. Here's a table that was actually exhibited at the Contemporary in Austin, and it shows a sterile lithography iceberg embedded into the table here. Some examples of some intricately designed skateboards. For those of you in the student side, you might find that interesting. Those again are SLS parts. Here's an artist that had done a wall sculpture. And then one of the things I think is really exciting is the cross-pollination between disciplines. And Bruce Beasley, Robert Michael Smith, some of the folks here, Professor Deagle, are some of the pioneers and early adopters from the early days of this technology to where we are now in the arts, going from one discipline to another. And another person that's done that more recently is Jenny Wu, who actually is an architect and wanted to use some of her ideas, or her architectural ideas, and translate them into jewelry design. And as you can see, her necklace is actually all interlocking mechanisms of these wonderful shapes, but it was created as one build, and with the support materials being able to be removed, this wonderful piece of jewelry can be completed in a blink of an eye compared to traditional methods. And I'm actually wearing some of her earrings that were from her lace line, and I think it's, I can't remember what these particular earrings are called, but she's actually selling them now as her own art line at the website shown here. So it's exciting what's happening for the individual artist. So Solidscape is one of the companies that's now part of the Stratasys fold. They do beautiful, intricate, detailed work, both on the jewelry side and then also for the dental implant area. In terms of consumer products, here's another architect, cross-pollinator, going from her work as an architect into consumer products design. And she did a FEA analysis first, a finite element analysis first on it to try and understand where the weight loads would be so she could design around that, and created this handsome chair. Here's another wonderful example of an output of intricate design. This is a Durotaxis chair, which can be used either as a rocking chair or as a chaise lounge. Terrific, isn't it? Okay, and here's another fun example. This artist, Francis Battanti, created what he calls the molecule shoes. I mean, it just shows just the fantastic output here, and the gradation of color, the gradation of the material. Well, I customized my leg a couple years ago, so I don't think I'll be able to wear those, but maybe some of you guys can wear those. There's recently a group of award-winning artists worked with Stratasys in collaboration to use the technology in innovative art. The collaborative project was called The Sixth Element. And I'd like to express a quote from that book. The body of work engages both the imagination and the senses in its expression of nature and interpretation of organic creation and force. They examine the relationship between form, dynamics, movement, performance, and reflect design nuances made possible with a combination of multicolor, multi-material 3D printing in all scales. So I'd like to share with you, and also I just wanted to mention that I have some of these brochure books with me, and I'll put them out by the MakerBot table that if you want to look at it in a little more detail, or if you want to see some more examples, in addition to the beautiful work that Mary's team, Mary's students are showing in the booklet that she talked about earlier. So here's A.L. Gaver. Wonderful use of showing how you can go from space to void to connecting pieces in a very unusual way. Nick Irving, he's showing the VeraClear as well as the solid colors in these wonderful amorphous shapes. Neri Oxman is another cross-pollinator. She's actually a professor at MIT, and I don't know if she's an architect, but I know she studied architecture at one point, and has done some phenomenal work also in 3D printing. And in fact, some of her works were shown at the Pompidou a couple summers ago, and because of that, one of the fashion designers had seen her work, and they ended up collaborating on some tech couture that perhaps some of you had seen, with these wonderful shapes, three-dimensional shapes coming out of the material, and was showcased on a Paris runway a couple summers ago, or maybe last summer. So if you want to take advantage of this and you don't use CAD, what can you do about it? The early pioneers needed to use CAD in order to be able to access a 3D printing, and that was a huge barrier. So here are some packages that some artists are using to help you be able to create without having to learn a full-blown CAD package. Has anybody here used ZBrush or Rhino? Okay. And then I know Mary had shown a clip from Kinematics. They have a package called Nervous that you can tap into too, which allows you to do some phase changes of some of the things that they've already started with. You can download designs from Thingiverse, and then of course you can use CAD. So the wave of sciences is just as exciting as the wave of opportunity from the art world. Meet Anastasia. Here's a little girl who actually helped create her own robo-hand. She had a congenital defect and was missing some of her fingers. And you know, she's gone from being bullied to being empowered, and she wears her hand proudly, and she's way cool with the kids. And just a few days ago in our local paper, we also had a young boy whose name's Dawson, who had a similar congenital defect. And again, he's gone from being you know, at the bottom of the heap to being hopefully the goalie of his soccer team. He's aspiring to that. So this is life-changing, life-empowering from folks who have access to the equipment. Anastasia's family has a MakerBot, so they can create her parts from the design that a group out of either South Africa or Canada has offered as a nonprofit. And from Dawson's hand, he was actually able to get his hand from a group that was inspired by a professor at Rochester Institute of Technology called eNable. So it's wonderful the collaboration that's happening over this technology for life-impacting help of kids and anyone. Here's a wrist splint that was created by UCLA grad students for a disaster relief project. Here's a entrepreneur who was able to get his product out, this tricorder that was actually awarded a top product designation from Consumer Electronics Show in 2014. Besides actual products, the technology can enable a surgeon to do surgical rehearsal or plan the surgery, especially for complicated surgeries. This group out of Malaysia used the technology also to do form fit of titanium plates for cranial implants. Here's a doctor out of Japan who uses it, the DuraClear and the VeraClear and the solid materials in one build so that you can see anatomical structures that might be difficult to surgically excise unless you see it all in its totality. And here's another shot of someone, Dr. Madsen, doing a surgical simulation in advance of a complicated procedure. And the more that they can see and envision in advance, we're finding that people are, they believe they're giving patients enhanced outcomes. And then just down the road here, a couple weeks ago, there was a grand opening for the Hill Country Science Mill Museum, and its charter is to help engage kids, especially middle schoolers and high schoolers, in science, technology, engineering, and math. And at their opening, they got a lot of the young kids too, and of course, they had a great time engaging with it. I'd like to show you a little clip here of a young girl who has a congenital condition that has really benefited from this technology, and no one can say it better than Emma herself, Emma and her magic arms.
When she was born, her legs were up by her ears and her shoulders were internally rotated, and she had ulnar deviation on her hands and rocker bottom feet. The geneticist came upstairs and told us she had arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. They brought her legs down and they casted her, and slowly and surely she started to develop. Our first year with Emma, we found out that there was going to be a conference, and it was in Philadelphia.
It was an arthrogryposis family meeting in Philadelphia where I described the Rex.
We watched a presentation on the Rex.
And that's how it all started.
We ended up in Tarek and Whitney's workshop.
The Rex was attached to a stand, and she was able to put her arms into the Rex and for the first time be able to lift her hand up towards her mouth.
She just started, throwing her hands around and playing.
We were bringing candy up for her to eat, and we were bringing toys up there, and it was so fun for us to go up there and to see her play.
The existing Rex, it's all metal parts, and it's kind of big, and Emma was too small for that. So we required something light and small that would attach to her body and go with her. So that's where we had this Stratasys 3D printing machine, and we thought, well, we could print it out for her.
And he did it, and the weight difference is significant. And for a child who only weighs 25 pounds, it makes a big difference. Whitney and Tarek put their minds together and came up with a jacket, and they would put the Rex on that, and we're on our second jacket. She outgrew the first one, and now we're on our second one. And it's still evolving. It's still growing into this incredible prosthetic that helps her to use her arms.
Without the 3D printer, we would not be in a position we're in with these younger kids, making them a Rex device that can go with them.
This is one of those industries that matches perfectly with 3D printing, additive manufacturing, because we need custom everything.
I think 3D scanning and printing technology is the future for this field.
The ABS plastic that they use is the same plastic used in Legos. It's human-friendly, if you will. It's really strong and durable to handle the abuse. We can answer a need in a heartbeat.
If the Rex breaks, all I have to do is take a picture and email it to Whitney. He knows exactly what the piece is. He prints it out. I go to the hospital, or he's even mailed them.
I don't have to worry about lead time to machine something, order supplies. I can just basically go back to my program and print out another one.
And it's back together and it's working. When she started to express herself, we would go upstairs and we would say, Emma, we're gonna put the Rex on, and she called them her magic arms, and everyone in the room cried.
We took it off of her on this one occasion to make some adjustments to it. And as we took it off, she cried out, "I want that." And we didn't think all that much of it, but when Mom started to cry, and we look over and ask Mom why she's crying, and she kind of takes a moment to recompose herself and tell us that that was her first complete sentence. To be a part of that, a little special moment for somebody else, can't help but kind of tug at your heartstrings.
So what can you do if you can't afford a huge expense? How can you access the technology? There are service bureaus in the area and nationwide, including Harvest and Solid Concepts like we talked about. You could actually create your own printer from a do-it-yourself printer kit. You can, of course, invest in your own 3D printer, from the low-cost bots to a higher performing piece of technology if that's what you need. There's also collaboration going on. I know Mary Visser and Dr. Dave Burrell out of UT Austin have collaborated in the past. Maybe you guys can do some collaboration if you're between institutions here. Stratasys Direct Digital Manufacturing offers from direct outputs to short-run manufacturing as an option. And there's also scan technology as an input. In fact, some of the folks in the foyer are showing the ability to scan off of, I think, an iPad. So for us, we've kind of gone from a toy frog to a huge giant creature. And before I show you this wonderful giant creature, I'd like to thank those who provided some of the slides for me today to share with you. And I'd like to share this Jimmy Kimmel clip.
Comic-Con is this weekend down in San Diego, and we have
Volume up, please.
a special sneak preview for you tonight. The very talented masterminds at Wired Magazine, Legacy Effects, Stratasys, and the Stan Winston School have created a robot monstrosity. They call it the Giant Creature, and my cousin Sal is outside with it right now. That is the Giant Creature. That is the cousin. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Sal, but the creature's 13 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 2,000 pounds. And does it have a name besides Giant Creature?
Yeah, its name actually is Kenneth Kestenbaum. Is
Is that
fellow.
right?
Yeah, you could check if you want.
Wait a minute, isn't that one of your friends from college? Isn't that his name
that
also?
might be it.
Oh, it is? Okay, all right. Piloting our creature tonight is Guillermo, our parking lot security guard. Hello, where is Guillermo? Oh, he's in there. Okay, there you go. Hi, Guillermo. I'm good. Do you have a license to drive one of these, Guillermo?
Not really.
You're like a giant chupacabra in that thing. Now tell us, what can the giant creature do, Guillermo?
Oh, this giant creature can do a lot of things. Eat, drink, and...
I think you knew what was coming on that one. So I would just like to invite you, especially those of you who are with us from Southwestern and also from the high school, I invite you to participate in this wave of opportunity, and I look forward to what you might be doing with it over these next 25 years. So thank you very much.
If you have any questions, would our ushers please, one of the things we ask is that you give them a few minutes to get the microphone to you and to get it turned on, okay? So we're ready for questions at this point.
I do have some, I don't have enough for all of you, I'm sorry, but I do have some examples of some puzzles here that show freedom of complexity, being able to create something in one build. And of course, once you know the one I picked is a little sticky. There we go. So those of you are you guys doing midterms or finals, or where are you at in that? No, in the middle, okay. Well, if you do need something when you're getting ready for a test or something, you can use this as your worry bead, your 3D worry beads. Go ahead and shout it while you're waiting. Oh, there you got another one.
Since you've obviously had a background in speculative development, what do you think are going to be the biggest trends in the digital outputs for 3D creation? For the software, ZBrush, Rhino, SketchUp, CAD, all of those things that you listed in your presentation.
Well, I'm not an artist. I don't come from that background. In fact, I'm really humbled by what I've seen today and what I've seen in the exhibit. So I'm not probably the right person to answer that. All I know is that it's been an impediment, and until you, with the advent of easier software packages to provide inputs into the equipment, that has created much larger part of the bell-shaped curve for accessibility to people. So maybe there's a call to action to some of you who might be in Professor Shelton's class on the mathematics side to help make it easier for those who are non-CAD enabled to take advantage of it. Would anyone else like to talk about the art packages they use that they feel are easy to use? Okay.
Do you have or know of a scanner that could take a perspective or 3D drawing to the 3D printer and print it yet?
You're scanning a piece of paper? A drawing?
3D perspective or something.
Okay. Well, I think you've got a phone now.
Do you know of a scanner that is available yet that you can take a three-dimensional drawing, like a perspective of a model of an image or of a sculpture, and produce it without having to go through CAD?
I mean, are you going from a piece of paper? Yes. Or, oh, okay.
Through a scanner to the 3D without having to do CAD?
Yeah, I'm not. Anybody who was out there in the foyer doing the scanning earlier today? Are they with us? Okay. Yeah, anybody care to weigh in on that one? Again, maybe there's an opportunity there.
I don't know the name of the company or who developed it, but I know there's at least there. I don't know the name of the company or who was developing it, and I can't remember where I saw it, but I know you can, there is a technology, you can take a photograph of a room, and then it will build a render of a 3D environment. So I'm assuming that you could, if I can extrapolate from that, you could do something with a drawing for sure. I think it's an interesting point because there, you know, apart from taking a laser scan of something or building it in a piece of software, there's a couple of other ways you can enter information into, you can digitize things into the computer. One of the things that I've been using is a CT scanner, so it's a high resolution X-ray tomography. It takes really high resolution X-ray slices of something, and I was using it to do my sculpture in the exhibition. So, and then because I've always found it very frustrating to use a lot of these programs, I just say I can't. You know, the learning curve is a year on some of these things, and my ideas are always running a little faster than that. So I'm maybe not as patient as some people on some levels. But I found that that's a real workaround for me, so I can take it's a little bit expensive right now to use it because it's primarily used for reverse engineering, or it's used in the engineering industry to study how, you know, how certain materials are stressing or not. So it will essentially give me the outside topography, but it'll also scan the inside of the object. So it's a full render of whatever it is that you want to look at or print afterwards.
Right. Thank you for that input. Certainly you can use a product from CGI that actually consumes the product but puts it in point cloud data, and then you can download it from there to a 3D printed part. We've been using mirroring CT and MRI data for medical applications for many years now with an interpolation package from Materialize called Mimics. And then there are some of the low-end scanners that are coming out now that may be good enough for a lot of people. MakerBot has one of them. But it's not exactly what you're asking for.
Can you stand up if you have the mic so we know? Yeah, it's hard for us to see up here.
Hear me? Okay, perfect. Firstly, thank you for an illuminating talk on the field, very broad. The question that I have, I thought it was very prescient that one of your slides had a slide dedicated to the intellectual property process, that the patent associated with this device, and yet ostensibly this is a technology that can basically copy things. And so do you feel that intellectual property law is evolving at the same clip that the technology is, based on your interaction with startup companies? And are there things in place that are going to protect creators as well as folks that are, creating modifications on intellectual property? So just a few thoughts on that, if you had any.
Well, that's a really good question, a very timely question. Do we have any IP attorneys in the audience here? Yeah, I don't know the nuances enough to know, like, if when we came in, I saw something that it looked like one of Bruce Beasley's designs when I came in, that was in the art exhibit, and I happened to be walking with Bruce, and I said, "Oh, Bruce, is that your artwork there?" And he said, "Yes." So at what point, if someone were to modify Bruce's work, reverse engineer it, and change it by a certain percentage, I mean, I don't know how that works in your world. I mean, that has the essence of Bruce's work, but at what point would it not be considered Bruce's work anymore and someone else's work? Anybody want to weigh in on that? Please. And this is Robert Michael Smith.
Hello. Okay. Actually, we went through something similar to this when I was setting up the International Sculpture Center's website about 15 years ago. And we actually were able to get a group of lawyers together to talk about, of course, then it was about 2D images, but this is an extension of that. The reality is that copyright is only as good as you can afford. And in the world of art, you gain a reputation for a look and a feel. So if someone doesn't look at my work and say that's a Robert Smith, or Bruce has someone knows that it's his, it kind of cuts off the dialogue for other people to come in. So I've seen lots of knockoff Bruce Beasleys around the world, and none of them were very good. And none of those people ever got any recognition or made any money. When it comes to copyright, you have to understand there's a thing called fair use. It's a fair use clause. And if you change anything even a little bit, if you're making a satirical statement, you're making a free speech statement, you can get away, or you're using it for educational purposes, you can copy just about anything. But nobody cares if you're copying unless someone else is making money on your idea. The best thing that can happen if you've got a good idea and someone's making money on it, if you can prove that it was your idea in the first place. Again, that's the only time that copyright really makes any difference. And so I spend a lot of time in China, and I can assure you that the world and civilizations have advanced because of copying. There's very little protection in other parts of the world. So, and yet, this is what keeps us all moving. We do have to be able to be free with our ideas, because that's what keeps civilization moving. But I hate to put it this way, but there is no copyright police, and no one's going to march in to save you. You better have a lot of good paperwork, and you have to have an idea that's worth money in the first place.
Thank you, Robert.
Are you going? Yeah.
Well, that was what Robert said was correct. I'd like to actually thank Lisa for though it was very interesting to see the beginning of your company, because right now you're the big guys on the block, And it's really been, I think, very instructive to see how that started. And I think it's instructive to all of us that you and Scott started with a vision, some courage, and a lot of tenacity. And now you're a big international company. So I think that in itself is an inspiration and lesson to people here. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. One of the things I think is really interesting is you as artists, I'm not an artist, but I mean, you are individually the artist, and what you do is your own work. As I see it for the building of a company, I see it as a collaborative effort. If we didn't have key employees, key contributors, we would have stayed a mom and pop shop. Of course, there were some other things we needed too, like we needed infusion of capital, and then, oh, by the way, we needed more infusion of capital, and oh, by the way, we needed more infusion of capital. But, growing a company doesn't happen in isolation. But thank you very much, Bruce.
I'd like to... Is it on? Okay. There's a delay. I'd like to comment, too, on, as an artist, it comes with the territory. You have students, and they want to see how to do something. They want to see how to think, and they try things out. We all try things out over time, looking for our own inner voice. It happens more often in music that you're singing someone else's song, but if you want to become a songwriter, then you start your own style. So I see this happening a lot across the world because we all go to the same exhibitions and so forth. And I've seen my work done with skeletons instead of bodies. I've seen my work done in other ways. And sometimes it just comes with the territory, and you learn to live with it. But like Robert says, if they're making money with it, find yourself a good IP man. Okay.
On? Okay. I brought a group of students, and we're mostly interested in the biotechnology. And I wanted to know what kind of materials are being used in those prosthetics or in some of the other uses for medical interventions.
Well, thankfully, we're going to have a wonderful speaker tomorrow in Dr. Atala, who has... Oh, this afternoon. Okay, thank you. Who has done groundbreaking work in the field of bioprinting. So I think that would be a great question to ask of him again. But in terms of what's being used now, like with the robo-hands, those are outputted with some sort of a thermoplastic, which is like an engineering type plastic. In fact, most of you probably have your cell phones with you. If you have a plastic case, that's probably out of ABS. The bioprinting is done in combination with like what they call a bio-ink, as well as the gel material. And it's really quite fascinating because in order to come up with some of the structures, there's a maturation piece to it as well. It's not just putting a couple things together, but there has to be kind of an incubation of that as well, a maturation process. So I'm sure we'll learn more about that this afternoon. But thank you. But the field of biomedical engineering has been an early adopter of the technology. People have been able to get custom knees and hips out of cobalt chromium or titanium, and instead of, like, Scott is 6'4", I'm 5'4", 3/4, and what they would put into Scott would be something different than they put into me. And so isn't it nice that we don't have a small, medium, large on a hip implant, that it could be customized to you so that you can have enhanced well-being in your life.
Don? Is Stratasys currently making a profit, and what do you see in the future as far as the company being a public traded company?
Well, I have since left operations, so I'm not speaking on behalf of Stratasys because we are a publicly held company, and so that creates additional things that I need to talk about, forward-looking statements and all that kind of stuff. So since I'm not in operations, I'm just going to talk about what Lisa thinks. And, I think that being a privately held company has its benefits and its merits and its limitations, as well as being a publicly held company. If we had not gone public, we probably would have not have been able to have scaled the way we have been able to do so. It wasn't just the going public. I mean, we went out for a very small offering. We went out at very low revenues, but this was many years ago. This was in 94. And now the bar is so high to go public. You got to be around 50 million in revenue. So we're really fortunate that we were able to access the capital market, because not only at that point, but then subsequent rounds of financing enabled us to provide the products that we have now. And in fact, there was a 55-45 merger between Stratasys at 55 and Objet at 45%. In essence, it was a merger of equals, but we couldn't have been able to have combined forces had we not been a bigger company. So, it's kind of a trade-off, not to say that all privately held companies are going to stay small. Cargill is one from the Twin Cities. That's a huge conglomerate. That's a privately held company. But, you need money in a technology company in order to be able to, do the R&D, buy the inventory, create new products. So it's sort of a trade-off. It's not it's a trade-off.
Between the hardware and the software, what kind of compatibility issues are there from product to product? And how can we know if we buy a machine, what program we have or are going to purchase is going to be compatible with that? Is there one that fits all, or is it mix and match?
Well, that's a good question, and Mary actually had in one of her slides, sort of the universal translator is what we call an STL format. So all the CAD packages have them. So it's kind of like you're agnostic to the specific package, but it has to go through this translator called an STL, and then the STL allows it to go into any of the different 3D printing technologies. There's also one out of Cornell called the additive manufacturing, I think it's AMC, that it would be similar to an STL translator. I don't know if anybody's using the AMC here. It hasn't really taken hold yet, but it's something that's out there now.
So I'm planning on going to college and majoring in geophysics.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Sorry. I'm planning on going to college and majoring in geophysics and 3D seismic imaging. So I was wondering if there was any 3D printing developments maybe there, like to show where the oil and gas might be in underground and stuff like that, if there was anything on that at all. It's kind of a silly question. Didn't come out as scholarly as I thought it would, but...
No, it's a great question, and I haven't seen it specifically, but that doesn't mean anything. In fact, I'd encourage you to Google it and see what you find, because there's just been such a sea change. So it's in all industries, all sectors. I did see, the ability of using the general technology to create a 3D printed structure out of concrete. So, maybe there's some way that you can take the data. You got to start with the data. So if you've got the ability to gather 3D data in some capacity, then, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to output it in a 3D format. Yeah.
Hello? Okay, I got it. I was just curious what you were doing before Scott went out into the garage to do his prototyping, because you're quite articulate in your presentation. And just
well,
curious.
those of you who've
If you
been
have
married.
your background.
Okay. If you've worked together and you've been married, you know that, at least for us, we bifurcated the responsibilities. He was the inventor, he was the vision guy, I'm on the sales and marketing side. And never the twain met, so it worked really well. No, we get along real well. It's just, he focused on what he did, and I focused on what I did. And then, worked together to help grow the company. And again, I mean, we had great advisors, we had a great board, we had, key contributors. So you need all those things. It's a groundswell to be able to get a company launched. It didn't just happen on Scott's shoulders or my shoulders, even though, if he had not done the original invention, we would not have, of course, had a company to grow.
Okay, we'll take our last question. Is there one more?
Is there any current technology being developed to see how small an object can be reproduced?
There is work in nanotechnology. I don't know that I can say much about it, but if you can envision it, I'm sure there's research being done on it.
There is, and I have seen it, but through a microscope.
Yeah.
So it's even so small, some things you can't see. But to deliver medicines, to move things through the body, and then other ways. Okay, let's see. I wanted to remind you that the books are for sale outside, and we'll have a book signing in the afternoon at 2:40. Yes? Thank you, Lisa. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure, and it truly is. It's just a tool in the toolbox. And I encourage, especially those of you coming from the high school and college, I really am looking forward to what you might be doing with this as a tool. Thank you.
Thank you.